everybody, and welcome back to another video on update 1.2.5 because we have all been duped. That's right, utterly duped by Thraxes, those little cheeky people. When this patch was announced, we were led to believe that this entire thing was all about different map scripts and UI changes, a couple of new city-state types, and even a rebalancing of Napoleon. But we were in fact duped because this patch is, I think, probably the biggest patch that has hit the game from launch until now. This patch changes absolutely everything about how the game plays, how it runs, the modern age, how the balance between cities and towns work. I'm calling it now. The meta is dead. Long live the new meta. I cannot overemphasize how big this patch is, and they snuck it through. I'm not going to go over stuff I went through in my last video, so there are a few things we're going to skip over today a little bit, like the new map types. I've already spoken about those. The UI changes do look pretty good, but we chatted about them to an extent, and to be honest with you, the best way I can really show these off is by actually diving into a game and letting you see them in play. The diplomatic and expansionist city-states we will talk about in a second. No. We need to talk about the actual real meat of this patch. There was an entire game overhaul. The entire game has been overhauled in terms of strategic balance, in terms of what the meta is, in terms of how Civ 7 has been set up for you to play. And now we can talk about it a little bit. Over the last several months, we've made several changes around leaders, civs, city-states, age transition settings, and more. Along the way, we've learned a lot about how you're playing the game and the way it's presenting, or not presenting a meaningful strategic challenge. In evaluating balance, a few things became clear. Many of the best options for maximizing yields are off-map, based on a passive bonus from attributes, city-states, and empire resources. Many of these bonuses are stacking percentages available to all civs, which diminish the value of leader and civ abilities in comparison. Oh my lord, I have been personally saying this for months. I am so happy that they are finally looking at this. We've spoken about this in videos and update videos many times. Civ 7 works on a percentage system, and any game that has percentage systems can be abused. What do we mean by that? Well, there were a bunch of city-state, empire resources, and attribute point bonuses you could take that gave you stacking percentage bonuses. For instance, there was an economic city-state that gave you 5% extra gold for every city-state you have suzerain. You have 10 city-states, that's 50% extra gold. That's the sort of thing that stacks. You then get attributes that do the same thing, resources that do the same thing, and hey presto, you have 15,000 gold per turn. I'm not even exaggerating, we have had that much gold in games so far. It's often easy to build every available building in an age. While not inherently a problem, this reduces strategic decision making. Players are choosing when to build and not what to build. Building value also diminishes as yields climb, making them even less interesting decision points. And again, this is very true. This is referring to how crazy the late game snowball is in terms of the number of resources you get and the strength of cities. It's usually optimal to play with as many cities as possible. Converting a new city has an upfront cost but requires little strategic consideration. Whilst we want to support wide playstyles, the effectiveness gap between wide and tall play, i.e. fewer cities and more towns, was too large. And basically this means that so far the meta in Civ 7 has been settle as wide as you can and have as many cities as you can. Cities are better than towns, and having as much of your settlement limit filled out as you can has always been better than not having your settlement limit filled out. It's just easy. The gold economy rarely challenges the player. New towns provide large amounts of gold and pay for themselves quickly, while maintenance costs like unit upkeep don't often make more than a small dent in finances. It's so true. Gold is ridiculously easy to get in Civ 7, and they have recognized that now. So what have they done about it? They want to bring more of the game onto the map, so not off-map bonuses, and emphasize player decisions. Off-map yields and stacking percentages have been reviewed and pretty much entirely removed. Leaders and civs retain their bonuses to increase their strategic impact. Now that is a really valid point, because I've said this before. The problem Civ 7 has is that leaders and civs are not a very big bonus in the grand scale of how powerful bonuses in Civ are. You know, getting 20 or 30% extra culture as Himiko sounds like a really big thing until you realize that some of the attributes and some of the resources were giving you 200% culture. They want the leaders and the civs to have more of an impact. I am all for that. Where possible, we have replaced percentages with numerical bonuses that are still meaningful, but don't snowball uncontrollably. When you snowball, it should be because of smart decisions, not repeated 3% bonuses. Looking at you, 3% bonus in the diplomatic attribute tree. We know who you are. In fact, I think this sentence actually defines the entire patch for me. This is the anti-snowball patch. The entire point of this patch is to stop players from uncontrollably snowballing, to remove some of that late game explosion and to slow the game down a bit. That is the inherent decision making that has been done with this patch. And this is a huge change, removing almost every stacking percentage bonus from the game. We're going to go through the detail in a second so you can see exactly what we mean, but that is a massive change. Buildings and city strategy. We've added a new cost progression mechanic, the buildings. Now, every non-warehouse building in a settlement increases the cost of future non-warehouse buildings there. A couple of things to note. Warehouse buildings are not included in this new calculation, so things like granaries are not included. This is non-warehouse buildings, and this applies to settlements, not cities, settlements. So if I am building in a settlement and I build a library, it costs the normal amount. But then if I put an amphitheater in it, it costs a little bit more, and a market, a little bit more than that. And so it gets more and more and more expensive. It's not just the case now that you will want to just be building everything all of the time, because the more you build, the more things get expensive. So if you're focusing on science, maybe you just want to focus on science buildings now. But it gets even more profound. Buildings across your empire also cost more for every additional city other than your capital. That's right. This is a Civ 5 mechanic. People have been saying for ages now, oh, I like Civ 5 more. Civ 5 is the best. Congratulations. This game has become a Civ 5-like economy. The more cities you have, the more expensive buildings now are across your empire. This is what I meant by the meta is dead. If you make every single settlement into a city, your buildings will now become prohibitively expensive. 20 cities, that's about 200% extra cost of every building. It would be a huge swing. To compensate for this, base costs have been adjusted, and most buildings now provide higher base yields. So we'll see how this shakes out in a bit. We have adjusted units maintenance in all ages to basically increase unit maintenance, and we have reduced base production and thus gold in towns, as well as making a number of adjustments to social policies, resources, city-state effects, modern tech costs, and other things. We're going to go through the meat of this patch in a bit, but I cannot emphasize enough how big a change this is. You know what? I think we actually do have to go through the detail here so you can really see how big this is. The new map types we have discussed before. An interesting point in the patch notes I did want to bring up on these very quickly is that the two new map types, continents and islands and Pangea islands, because these are working on the new type of map generation which emphasizes randomness, you cannot play these maps with a balanced start. Balanced start is disabled on these two map scripts, and you have to go back to the old scripts in order to get the balanced starts, which I think is a very interesting choice. I can see why they've done it, because they've said, hey, these maps are inherently random. They will spawn completely randomly. That's what you wanted after all. You want maps that look better and are more aesthetically cool and are more random with really good starts and really bad starts. That's what you wanted. We can't also give those maps balanced starts. It kind of goes against it. But then I would also say all you have to do is look at how Civ 6 did balanced starts. Civ 6 gave everybody, inherently a map random start. So balanced start didn't change where you spawned on the map at all. What it did was just make sure that you had a number of resources by you that were inherently balanced between the players. So you got at least availability to strategic resources, a couple of luxuries. I mean, none of the balanced starts ever actually are balanced starts. There's a whole mod for that, but it was possible to have a balanced start on pretty much any map script. So I don't know why they've disabled it. Well, I do know why, but I feel like there probably was a workaround there, but never mind. Let's talk new city-states. We knew that there were two different types now. We have diplomatic and expansionist city-states, which is the 5th and 6th type of city-state on the map. This is what they do. And oh boy, some of these abilities go from downright ridiculously bad to ridiculously meta-defining. The befriend gift is the little bit of yield you get as the city-state becomes suzerain. There's a point, I think about 2/3 of the way through, where they send you a gift of some kind. Diplomatic city-states give you 50, 250, or 1,000 happiness towards your next celebration, depending on the age you're in. In Antiquity, the bonuses are allowing the creation of festival grounds, unique improvements, which are 1 influence and 1 happiness. They must be built on flat terrain, 1 per settlement adjacent to a district, and they gain double yields during celebrations. So you can get up to 2 extra influence per settlement. This is going to be an incredibly powerful one. If you are running a city-state build, if you are trying to get as much influence in the game as you can, the Festival Grounds is going to be a top-tier pick for you. Gain the Send Delegation Endeavor. When accepted, both civs gain 4 happiness per turn, and you gain vision of their capital. If supported, both civs gain 8 happiness per turn, and you both gain vision of each other's capitals for the duration. This is interesting because this was always in the game in Civ 5 and Civ 6 as just a default diplomatic interaction, so I'm glad to see it back in 7. Feels strange to have it hidden behind a city-state, but vision of each other's capitals is quite interesting. I like the fact that they are adding more endeavors into the game. This isn't the first or only endeavor that's being added into the game, and there are a lot of people, such as Benjamin Franklin, who will benefit from having multiple positive endeavors with people, so this is a really big pick for him. 2 happiness on happiness buildings, just a stackable. Well, it's not stackable, it's just 2 happiness on happiness buildings. You don't get that anymore. What I mean is just it stacks on top of regular building happiness. 20% influence towards starting and supporting endeavors and sanctions for each diplomatic city-state you are suzerain of. You will notice this is a change that they have put in with this patch. Most stackable city-state bonuses now only apply to the same type of city-state as you have already used. So note that this is 20% influence for every diplomatic city-state. Not just every city-state, but every diplomatic city-state you're suzerain of. You're going to have to pick and choose much more to get the bonuses that you want these days. But again, if you are choosing to play endeavors and sanctions, this is a handy influence reduction. 20% influence towards starting espionage actions for each diplomatic city-state you are suzerain of, and they complete 25% faster. This is what we are now calling the Tubman meta. That's right, Harriet Tubman can now get even faster spying and spend even less influence doing it. Tubman, you scandal. You are going to be absolutely insane. 1 social policy slot, 1 happiness on warehouse buildings. There's extra warehouse building things being put into the game. I can see there's going to be a genuine meta here with gaining 6 city-state suzerains, 1 of every type, and then just going for all of the warehouse buildings and nothing else. Then your granaries just give you every single yield. Like, it's quite cool. And that's a shareable one. Anyone can have that. And we move into exploration. Minor embassy, which is a unique improvement. +2 influence, +1 influence for each ally you have. So that is a maximum of, or quite a few, depends on how many people you have on the map. Must be built on an existing improvement in a city. Only 1 per city. Note that city and not settlement. It just gives you influence. That's pretty decent. Now this is really interesting. Gain the Demand Tribute Sanction. Watch out, Napoleon. This sanction targets 1 settlement with treasure resources. It inflicts -20 gold per turn on the owner of that settlement for the duration, which is, it's quite a small thing, but it's annoying. And on completion, creates a treasure fleet worth 2 points. This is a way to use your influence to make treasure fleets. I love this. This is this sort of really weird interaction where you do 1 tree in order to give you a benefit with the other. We're spending points on the diplomatic tree in order to get economic benefits. I love that. That's amazing. This is the sort of interaction I really love to see. 2 happiness on happiness buildings. It's exactly the same. You'll notice this as well with city-state bonuses. A lot of the ages don't change the bonus. Like we had 2 happiness on happiness buildings in Antiquity. We still have 2 happiness on happiness buildings in exploration, and I find that weird. I would have expected to see this as a per age bonus, but I assume assume the developers are thinking, well, in exploration, you're going to have twice as many happiness buildings, so it will give you overall twice the benefit. I don't know. I would like to see the balance on this, because I think these bonuses are going to start really good and they're going to get really bad. I'll give you a hint now, or a warning. This is in the modern age as well. 20% influence towards starting and supporting endeavors and sanctions for each diplomatic city-state you're suzerain of. We've seen that. Here's the spying one. Here's the social policy one. Here's the warehouse building one. So a lot of these are the same between ages. The modern bonuses, though, allows the creation of the Circus Fair unique improvement. 6 happiness, 1 influence when built in cities, which doesn't feel like a lot for the modern age, but sure. Must be built on an existing improvement in settlements with at least 15 population, 1 per settlement. You're only building this in cities. I don't think anyone has towns of 15 population. You've specialized them long before that. This doesn't feel very good. I mean, maybe this will help you to put specialists down at the end of the game, but it doesn't feel very good. Ideological revolt is a really strange one. This is an espionage which targets one city of a civ with an ideology, and on completion pillages up to 4 tiles in that city. Now, I kind of like this. This feels a little bit like in Civ 6, the neighborhood spy action where you can destroy the neighborhood and spawn partisans, or maybe even breaching dams where you do a lot of damage to a city that way. The problem is, though, in Civ 7, you can fix pillage tiles instantaneously by just spending gold. So I feel like all you're doing is costing someone a little bit of gold. I feel like this isn't very powerful. I could be wrong on this. I'd like to see maybe that change so that that damage can't be fixed for a little while. I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's going to be that useful. Everything else is exactly the same. So we'll look now at expansionist city-states. The befriending gift is 1 migrant in the capital, which is really good in antiquity and really terrible in modern. I'm surprised that, unlike all of the others, this doesn't get better according to age. I would have liked to have seen 2 or 4 migrants later in the game. It would have made a big difference. 1 migrant in every city, maybe? I don't know. Let's have a look at the bonuses. Allows the creation of the Yakshal unique improvement. That is not how you say that, by the way. I don't know what an A with a little hat sounds like. That's not something that is in the English language. 2 food plus 1 food on farms in desert in this settlement must be built on an existing improvement in the desert. Cannot be placed to another one. This seems like a very desert specific improvement, which is weird because we already had a desert improvement. I can't remember the Casbah. Whereabouts is that? Is that exploration? I don't remember. But what it is effectively is a miniature Petra. This is Petra. You put it in a desert city and it gives you extra food in deserts. It's Petra. That's all it is. It's mad. And I think it stacks because you can have as many as you can as long as it's not placed next to another one. This could be insane. Like, you'd need a desert civ to make this work, but that could be insanely good. Interesting. 1 food on resources is the sort of bonus that just is really nice, especially with a civ like Mississippi or a leader like Amina. Incredibly good synergy. 4 food on food buildings. That's a big improvement for a granary at the beginning of the game. Blimey. 1 food in settlements for each expansionist city-state you were suzerain of, doubled in towns. Oh my lord, that's the Tecumseh bonus, everyone. That is the Tecumseh bonus, but it's even better. 2 food in every settlement for every expansionist city-state. Oh my lord, this is wildly powerful and I love it. If I've got my maths right on this one, if you're using Tecumseh with his food memento, this will mean that every expansionist city-state will give you 3 food in all settlements and 4 food in towns. This is antiquity. That's a big deal. That's a huge amount of extra food. I love it. Hell yeah. Receive a 3 settler in your capital. Well, nice early game tempo. Yeah, you like it. +1 settlement limit. So there's another way of getting settlement limit in antiquity. Interesting. And +1 food on warehouse buildings. So that is the same, if not slightly weaker than the attribute bonus. The attribute bonus is 1 food per age, which again kind of takes me back to my point before about whether or not that should have been a per age bonus. Written, it isn't, but maybe they're just assuming you have 2 to 3 times as many warehouse buildings in future ages. I don't know. I'm not a game developer. I don't do balance. I simply talk about things as my job. Exploration. The unique improvement is +4 food, +1 science if built in a settlement following your religion, which is the same mechanic as we have on monasteries, and it must be built on an existing improvement in floodplains. So we were thinking that floodplain civs didn't have enough science as it was. Now they have even more. I think the bonuses here though are pretty small. I'm not really thinking we're going to get too excited about that. 1 food on resources, 4 food on food buildings, which is exactly the same. 2 food on settlements for each expansion in city-state you're suzerain of and doubled in towns. The bonus gets even better. This is mad. Receive a population in your capital when you become suzerain of an expansionist city-state. That's quite neat, actually. That's a really cool way of increasing your capital size, especially if you've got a really, really big capital that needs a lot of food. That's just 3 resources or specialists or whatever you want it to be. +1 settlement limit, +1 food and warehouse buildings. That's all the same. Then the modern bonus, the abattoir. Oh no, we're killing all the animals. 5 food, +1 food and -1 happiness on each abattoir in the settlement. So the more you build, the better. Must be built on an existing improvement with a food yield. Cannot be placed next to another one. So at the cost of happiness, you can turbocharge a settlement with food. I think this is going to be an amazing town improvement to send food back to your cities in modern to get the specialists in as quickly as you can. We'll see if that proves to be correct. Food and resources, food and food buildings is exactly the same. 3 food and settlements for each expansion of city-state. It gets even better, sure. And then everything else is exactly the same as that. So again, more ways of getting settlement limit and tons of ways of getting food. I think honestly, these expansionist city-states are going to be highly sought after. Highly sought after. But that's not just it. These are just the new ones. All of the city-states in the game have been overhauled to an extent. We found city-state bonuses were too powerful and encouraged suzeraining as many city-states as possible. Devs, that has not changed. Your bonuses are still crazy. You still want to suzerain as many city-states as possible. You might be more targeted now, but I mean, that hasn't changed. Over strategically choosing them based on bonuses. So we've made some balance adjustments. Now, to stack bonuses, you need to suzerain more of the same type of city-state. We've also cut down on percentages bonuses, 3 techs and civics, and most building yield bonuses to make other gameplay decisions more important. The new ones follow the rules, and leaders like Tecumseh and civs like Greece and Siam get a nice boost since they will still count all city-states for their relevant effects. Tecumseh, Greece, and Siam, who I think are 3 of the most powerful things in the game right now, have all received boosts because of this, because their bonuses still apply to all city-states. Okay, sure. I love it. I absolutely love it, but my lord, that is wild. Oh, duh. Okay, what changes have we made? Well, a lot of them have been nerfed. +1 combat strength to ranged and siege units only now apply to military city-states you're suzerain of, and that is the same changes to infantry, naval units. Yeah, pretty much everyone is now only military city-states count on the combat strength, which is probably fair because it means your combat bonus is only going to get to maybe +6 at the very most, rather than some of the games I've run where I've been running a +20 combat bonus. I mean, again, Tecumseh is still going to be wildly powerful, but what can you do? Cultural city-states. 5% production towards wonders for every cultural city-state, so that's been updated. 2 culture on culture buildings, so that replaces the monument bonus, which was incredibly powerful. Now it's just a flat +2 on all culture buildings, so the monuments will still be quite powerful, but it means that you're not going to be getting +14 or +16 monuments in the antiquity. So that, I think, is probably a needed balance change. We now have receive a 3 civic instead of 20% production towards constructing temples for every city-state and 20% production towards constructing museums for every city-state. While these were a beloved bonus, the 3 techs and civics provided by these type of bonuses had too much of an impact on the game's pace. As a silver lining, these bonuses can now grant any unlocked tech and civic, not always your cheapest one. So, right, basically what they've done is they've gotten rid of the bonuses towards temples and museums. Those are now gone. Now you just get 1 free civic. That's it, just 1 free civic. And there's no 3 civic per city-state anymore in the beginning of the game. I will agree with that. The 3 techs and the 3 civics were so powerful. It was the literal meta every time you played the game. I'm kind of glad that those are gone now. Little one-off bonuses are fine. It's still very powerful. The city-state effects that gave cultural great works were never used. Now they should be. +1 culture on temples in cities for each cultural city-state you're suzerain of and the relic. And then this one does 2 culture on museums for each cultural city-state and the artifact. Yeah, so those are very powerful now. As long as you stack the same type of city-state, you're going to get some big bonuses here. Economic. They've got rid of the 5% gold for every city-state you're suzerain of, and they have replaced it with 1 gold on active trade routes for each economic city-state you are suzerain of. In exploration, it's 2 gold, and in modern, it's 3 gold. Again, gold has been decimated in this patch. All the percentage bonuses are gone, and all of the gold will be reduced. They've brought the trade route range for economic city-states into antiquity. They have given a +4 gold on gold buildings to every single age in the game. In exploration, the trade route range is +10 for each economic city-state, and in modern, there is no distance anymore. You simply just can start a trade route. That's wildly powerful. Like, thinking about it, because you can just use merchants instantaneously. That's really, really powerful. Wow. Okay, they snuck that in. Blimey. Just make a bunch of merchants in exploration, carry them forward, and just get the best deals all over the map. Scientific city-states, 2 science on science buildings. That doesn't stack. That's just a one-off. Receiver 3 tech is in the game, but only once. And instead of the 20% production towards science buildings and 5% science for every city-state you're suzerain of, now it is just 5% production towards constructing all buildings for each scientific city you're suzerain of. Hey, that's a worldwide building reduction that will offset the cost of having multiple cities. That's cool. That's really good. With our new change to building costs, we wanted to make sure that there are a few ways to interact with it. Science gameplay is all about maximizing the value of your buildings, so it felt like the right place to help players start to manage the cost of a growing city. Fine, I don't disagree with that. Oh, but the changes get even bigger because they have now rebalanced the attribute trees. Stacking bonuses on the attribute tree were the biggest culprit behind ballooning yield numbers in the later edges of the game. That is so true. Stacking percentage bonuses on alliances, stacking repeatable bonuses, they made the late game absolutely mundane, but they are now gone. We still like the gameplay of building out your leader's attributes over the course of full campaign, but all direct percentage bonuses to yields have been removed from the attribute trees and replaced with reasonable but still powerful static bonuses. Some of them are not powerful. Some of them are not powerful at all. Some of them have been absolutely handicapped. 10% culture in cities with a wonder is now 5 culture per age in cities. Okay, that's fine. 10% culture every alliance you have is now 10 culture per age for every alliance. That's not as good. Really good early game, very bad late game. 30 culture per alliance. I mean, you can get some decent numbers there, but wow. +5 culture per age repeatable rather than 5% culture repeatable. Wow, that's really, really, really bad. A whole attribute to get 5 culture or 15 in the modern age. People are not going to be doing this anymore. Repeatables are now not the most powerful thing. That is insane. And in fact, this is actually done to all of them. It's 5 gold per age rather than 5% gold. It's 5 science per age rather than 5% science. The alliance bonuses are exactly the same. And the biggest offender of them all, 3% towards all yields for every alliance you have. That is gone. It is now a repeatable of 3 influence per age and 5 happiness per age. Oh, that is not worth rushing at all. Blimey, that's bad. So I have 2 thoughts about this. I think the repeatables are now way too underpowered. I think it's a shame that we're going to static bonuses because static bonuses can be really difficult to get right. But at the same time, I like the fact that people aren't just beelining repeatables. It should be that the other abilities are powerful and you want to go for those. So I don't mind it. It's just weird. It's so different. Rebalanced buildings. Oh my lord, this is where the changes get even bigger. All building costs now scale with the number of buildings in that settlement and cities to your empire. What are the numbers? Here are the numbers. The cost to produce and purchase a building increases by 5% for each non-warehouse building in that settlement. So 1 building, 5%, 4 buildings, 20%, 10 buildings, 50%. It's expensive, but it's not going to stop you doing much. However, this is the bad one. The cost to produce and purchase a building increases by 10% for each city other than your capital in your empire. Now, if you go through antiquity with 3 cities, because you don't count your capital, that is a 20% increase. On top of this increase, 20% increase in the cost of buildings. And in modern, when people will frequently have 10 cities, that is 100%, no, 90%. You get what I mean? It is a massive increase. And modern, this is going to be felt really, really badly because it's not just production, it's gold. And in modern, buildings win you the game. Things like museums, spaceports, aerodromes, these are really, really expensive things. And now the more cities you have, the more expensive they have. The meta has changed. Cities are now no longer spam as many as you can. If you have a city in your empire and it's not doing you anything, like the yields aren't very good, it's not very built up, let me tell you now, for free, that city is costing you because that city is making everything else in all of your other cities more expensive. You want to avoid, absolutely avoid making a city unless it is absolutely going to do you good. And I think the meta of how many cities is best in modern is going to change from as many as possible. It could be like 4 or 5, it might be 10, I don't know. We'll see how it plays out, but massive change. Absolutely massive change. The devs have made some more changes to balance this a little bit to encourage better pacing and more strategic planning around constructing and overbuilding buildings. We've adjusted costs and base yields across all ages. The biggest changes are in exploration and modern. Buildings now provide more yields, and they really do. We've also designed one building per age to focus primarily on influence, giving it a higher influence output than before. This is mostly a shift in how we think about those buildings and will serve as a foundation for future content. Yep, I'm calling it now. There's going to be religion. Religion will be coming into this game. They're just balancing it now so they know what to do for later. The buildings are all otherwise the same, but as you can see, tier 1 buildings, Altar, Monument, Library, Barracks, Garden, and Market now have 90 production and provide 3 base yield of their type. The tier 2 buildings is now 4 base yield and is 180 production. The Villa now gives 3 influence and 3 happiness. Civ unique buildings have a base cost of 135 production and give 3 base yield. Apart from Poor Carthage, which is 2 because it can be spammed. So it's not a huge change, but I mean, like the library and the monument have increased because they were 2 base before, now it's 3. Exploration is when you start to see it even more though. Temples, kilns, observatories, dungeons, inns, bazaars, and wharfs now have 200 production costs and provide 6 base yield. 6 is a big boost. And then tier 2, Menagerie, Pavilion, University, Armour, Hospital, Bank, and Shipyard have a base cost of 380 and provide 8 of the base yield. Wow, 8 is a huge, huge yield. You know what? I'm calling it now. Urban centers are now going to be even more important than they were before. Urban centers, the towns where you can build the tier 1 buildings in them. Oh, that's a lot of spam. That's a lot of spam. And they don't increase your city count as well. Oh, that's a point. So they don't increase your production penalties. Interesting. Civ unique buildings have a base of 6 yield. That makes them pretty impressive in terms of how powerful they are. And in modern, the unique buildings are even more. They give 9 base yield. I like to see that. That gives the civs a little bit more punching power. So some of the civs that we haven't seen very big yields on in terms of the unique buildings, now they do a lot more. The guild hall now gives 6 influence, which is a lot. In modern, warehouse buildings now have a base cost of 535 production. I don't know if that's more or less. Tier 1 buildings are 420 production and provide 9 base yield. Tier 2 buildings have a base yield of 12. Why is this important? It's because overbuilding hasn't been looked at enough. Overbuilding is when you take a building from a previous age, which is now redundant, and you build over the top of that. Previously, a building would give you, I think it was 2 of the yield. So if you had a library in a future age, it would give you 2 science. That is still the case, but now you're looking at a building that's giving you 2 science and replacing it with something that gives you 6 or even 9. It's going to be so much better to overbuild as quickly as possible. Radio station now gives 9 influence, and full tile buildings have double the base cost of buildings because they are 2 buildings, but then also have double the base yield for most of the cases. The aerodrome only has 9 production, but the rail station now gives 18 gold, and the launch pad gives 24 science, which is ridiculously large. I mean, again, it's expensive, but that's a lot of science, especially when you consider some wonders only give you 3 or 4. Unit maintenance has been changed around. They get more expensive per tier of the unit, but the thing you need to now know is that infantry and ranged units are incredibly cheap. They basically have no gold penalty at all. Siege units and naval units, well, light naval units have a medium-sized penalty. Cavalry is now really expensive, which I think is a really good change. For a long time, cavalry has just been better than infantry in all ways. There's no point building infantry. Cavalry is 5 stronger. It's faster. Now it's also more expensive. 3 gold per turn versus 0 gold per turn. In exploration, 6 versus 2. In modern, 9 versus 3. So you're going to see a distinctly larger cost in terms of gold to maintain those units. Heavy naval is 9. Anti-air aircraft is 9. Anti-ground is 12. And bombers are now 15. Bombers are very expensive to maintain. Unique units have been adjusted accordingly, and some have reduced maintenance costs as part of their design. So the Hussar now makes a lot more sense for Prussia because cavalry is so expensive. It's not costing 9 per turn anymore. It's a lot cheaper. More rebalancing. Towns now have no base production yield, but they do when they convert to cities. They gain 3 production per age. So because towns don't have production in the city hall, when you make a town, it doesn't instantly give you gold because all of the production of a town gets converted into gold. It's 3 less gold per town per age. So 5 towns in antiquity would be 15 less gold. 15 towns in modern would be 45 less gold. It's a small change, but it does make towns a little weaker. I would like to point out, and if the developers are listening to this, this is a plea. Please rename the city hall. I get the city hall is a city hall if it's in a city, but you shouldn't be using sentences like city halls in towns. You can't have a city hall in a town. It's a town, not a city. Can we call it like an urban center? Can we call it a big building? An administrative center? A central hall? I don't know. There's got to be something that we can call. Let me know in the comments. Is there a better name that it can have for it? I don't know. The city hall is such a funny name. Why is this still a thing? Ah, dear. We get a pop-up that updates tell the player that a city has increased production and warn about the increased cost of buildings when converted. Brilliant. More information, the better. And then social policies have rebalanced as well. Castes has lost the 10% or 20% extra food in towns and now just has 2 food in all settlements, which has stolen it from clan networks, which was the previous with 2 food. This now has 20% growth rate in towns with a growing focus. It already has 50% as part of the growth rate. It just encourages you to use growth rate or growing focus in towns at the beginning of the game. I don't mind that. Nice big towns will help you later. 2 culture on culture buildings and 20% production towards culture buildings, and then 2 science on science buildings and 20% production on science buildings are Overhaul drama and poetry and literature because they just weren't used at all. But that's totally fair. I think it was 50% production towards the buildings, but now you just get a flat bonus towards them. So if you're going cultural or scientific, those will give you good yields. Chivalry and regulars now give a 30% production towards their relevant units. They thought they were too powerful. They've reined them back in. Yep, I kind of get that, especially if you want leaders to have powerful abilities. You want the base cards to not be particularly good. That's fine. And then resources. Resources have been overhauled as well. Mainly the empire resources. These are resources that apply bonuses across your empire. And yep, these were stackable percentage bonuses. They have all gone. They have been decimated in power. Gold is now, instead of 20% towards purchasing buildings, 1 gold and happiness in all settlements. Yep, let that sink in. That is a distinct nerf. Gold was the most important resource in the game because it let you purchase buildings with a lot less gold. Now it just gives you a little bit of extra gold and happiness, and that's it. Silver, the same thing. Rather than purchasing and upgrading units, it is now 1 gold and 1 food in all settlements. They stack, so you can get some nice amounts of gold and food and happiness, and I think silver actually with the extra food and settlements will be decently useful. But oh my lord, that is really nerfed. Wine now no longer has the 10% culture when in a celebration. It's now +5 culture. Hardwood and jade have been nerfed as well to 10% production towards naval units rather than 20%, and 10% gold in the settlement rather than 15%. They reckon the gold and silver effects are still quite strong. I don't know about that. I think they're going to be quite weak, but you you know, we'll see. Gold and silver gets no better in exploration, is the same effect, which again I find weird, but I guess they're assuming you're going to have more settlements in later ages, so you get bigger bonuses. Wine gives 10 culture in a celebration rather than 10%. Furs gives 10 gold rather than 10%. But furs and wine were the most powerful resources in exploration because you could stack crazy modifiers, no longer, but they still count as treasure, so that's good. And then modern, exactly the same thing for gold and silver. So yeah, huge changes. Do you see what I mean about just the snowball has been stopped? Attributes, city-state bonuses, resources, all of those percentage bonuses are now gone. There are only flat amounts that you can do. So yeah, you can still build those bonuses and have science on science and science or multiple gold bonuses, but you can't stack them like you used to. This is very different, very different. And then some minor things. We've got pacing notes on the victory conditions in the modern age. They've reduced explorer movement from 3 to 2 because they thought they zipped around the map too quickly and they wanted you to have more of them. I mean, I already built loads of them, so I'm not sure I quite get that, but sure. Reduced the number of overall artifacts available on large and huge maps. That was a thing where there were just a lot of them, so I can see that. Scientific victories, well, a lot of the late game techs have been reduced slightly in cost to make up for the fact that there aren't as many percentage bonuses anymore. Okay, that's fine. And the costs of the factory, rail station, and port buildings have been reduced as part of our pass to speed up the economic victory. I really like that change. I thought these were way too expensive after the previous adjustments. So yes, we should be encouraging those. Advanced options have now been added to multiplayer. Custom difficulties options are now always shown in advanced options. Yeah, I mean, I really like the fact that advanced custom difficulty options are now in multiplayer. So that's a really, really nice change. Multiplayer really showing the love that it needs to see. Now, can you spot the really, really huge AI change hidden in here? Can you see it yet? Can you see it? Because it slipped by me first time and now I can see it. A hint, it's this one. AI will now no longer pick the first available pantheon when they unlock mysticism and will instead pick one that is most beneficial. That's right. No more top to bottom pantheon picking for the AI. It's going to pick sensibly now. No, my poor stone circles. What am I going to do? Very welcome change that. Very welcome change. AI will now no longer avoid rejecting a denounce sanction when you have overwhelming military on their borders. This is a little kicker one as well. It will no longer fails to add additional influence towards the befriend independent action when the player takes the lead of the action. So if you are stealing a city-state faster than them, they will now counter you. Very, very good in terms of the AI playing better. Very annoying if you're trying to grab all the city-states because they're going to throw in more influence and they're going to steal them from you again. Yeah, it gives greater weighting to the population of offered cities and peace deals. Peace deal mechanics just need to be changed full stop, so I'm looking forward to seeing if that helps. The AI no longer bypasses government celebration limitations and chooses the same one when entering a celebration. I'm not really sure what that means, but we'll see. Better unit prioritization to hit weaker units. Fine. For age transitions, when in regroup mode, units will prefer to remain packed in a commander rather than being distributed towards your settlements. That used to be really annoying. Like if I've left units in a commander, I want them to stay in the commander. So that's a great thing. Snow will no longer be missing on Tundra when transitioning to the next stage. I never noticed that, but now they've said it, I can see it. That's really weird that I've never spotted that before. Updated the Lyceum's legacy card to include 3 science yield on all quarters. That wasn't working properly. Now it's working properly. Brilliant. Hill forts can no longer be placed on improved rural tiles. I didn't even know that was broken. Fair enough. Unique improvement adjacency placement restrictions can no longer be bypassed when players add multiple unique improvements to a production queue at once. I never knew that was a bug. Oh, I wish I'd known that. Oh, that's crazy. And now improvements consider items in the build queue when checking the same type adjacent requirements. I like that. Clever placement. Good. Economy. Incense production boost no longer applies to all units when slotting the resource. I think that's a modern age thing. I'm gonna have to see that one in action to see what that does. Tenements, stock exchanges, and laboratories no longer stack their bonuses to quarters when built in different settlements. This was highlighted on Reddit as a bug by GDR a little while ago, and it was really funny. Somebody at Firaxis had coded a laboratory. Instead of giving science to a quarter in the city when you build it, it gave science to every quarter in every city when you built it, and then it stacked. So if you had 10 laboratories, you were getting extra science 10 times. It was really funny. That is now fixed. So we won't be seeing insane yields in the modern age like we did before. Same thing with city parks, and canneries have now all been fixed. The hermitage has been fixed. The farm will no longer receive 2 food when placing the greenhouse, a warehouse building grosser. Oh, weird. Mountain terrain natural wonders no longer fail to gain happiness when the player unlocks the mitter, or it no longer fails to gain the 2 food and 1 production bonus when worked from the Inca Civ passive outpost. Again, mountains they've never quite worked. Like, I've always found it weird that the happiness disappears from them. But if they're fixing at least the Incan abilities, that makes Inca a little bit more powerful. Again, not that they needed it, but that's fine. Resync, stability improved in multiplayers, brilliant. Not that I'm looking towards a certain annual event in winter. Lakes are no longer missing. Oh, naval focus fire now works properly with naval ranged attacks. Brilliant. That's the naval commander ability. It just didn't work before. Now it does. Ah, the old stormy seas bug. Units can no longer take damage multiple times in a single turn from ocean damage when in an ocean tile. There was a bug where if you had multiple units all taking the damage in the same turn, they would each take it for every unit in the sea. So if you had 3 exploring boats, they would each take the damage 3 times, which sucked. That should now be fixing. The move by rail action now probably reminds the player to have a rail station in the capital. Yep, I know, that's the Iceland game all over. Focus fire no longer cues movement after attacking. Yeah, that's really nice. Ranged units no longer move instead of attack when directed at an undefended fortified district with the focus fire ability. Yeah, just a lot of this stuff needed to be changed, and I'm really glad it does. And now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of the leaders. The Napoleons have had the huge update, and now we know exactly what they do. All basic sanctions are automatically unlocked, 50% influence towards initiating sanctions, 5 culture and gold per age for each leader you have a sanction on, except announcement, and 1 combat strength for land units, every sanction you have except announcement. This is for the Emperor Napoleon instead of the whole continental system thing. Hey, it's much better. I think sanctions are heavily underused, and a little bit of culture and gold is better, and combat strength is fun, but there are a limited amount of sanctions, so Napoleon is only going to be so strong. We'll see how that plays out. But they're right, continental system really did suck. So this is better. Revolutionary Napoleon is now +1 movement for all land units. We had that before. Defeating an enemy unit now provides 100% culture rather than 50%. That's more meaningful, and I think with the percentage bonuses now removed, that should be a little bit more impactful, especially at the beginning of the game. And this is the kicker. The first time each age that a war is declared against you, gain an army commander in your capital packed with an infantry, cavalry, ranged, and siege unit, even if those units haven't been unlocked. That's so fun. Commanders are expensive, and now you get a 3-1 every age. That's brilliant, especially because you can declare war on somebody in an alliance, and then their ally will trigger that for you. Yeah, brilliant. Really, really good. Catherine the Great now gets buildings with a great work slot on wonders as well. She was powerful. Now she's even more powerful. And in terms of civ balancing, oh dear, poor Abbasid has been singled out as being way too powerful. So now instead of 50% production towards buildings and cities with at least 8 population, it's now 20% with at least 5 specialists. That is significantly weaker, and that's not even the worst bit. 15% science in cities with at least 8 population? No, 10% with at least 5 specialists. 2 science and 2 happiness in towns rather than 4 science on the tradition, and 1 gold and science for each resource with at least 5 specialists rather than +3. Oh, poor Abbasid has been absolutely gutted. I think that's a bit too strong, but apparently they were punching way above their weight. Fair enough. We'll see how that breaks down. And that, to be honest, is the majority of the important changes. There are more, but they're all much smaller, and we spoke about the leaders and the civs. Do you see what I mean? This was the thing. It was all about, oh yeah, look, we've got some new civs, we've got some new leaders. Isn't this really good? We've changed some stuff. This absolute giga patch has fundamentally altered how civ now works. This is mad. The meta of civ has fundamentally shifted. I know some of you won't be happy because Civ 7 still has switching civs, and you don't like the way the leaders have been implemented, or various other reasons. I don't think the game is is ever going to really change for you. But if you always had a problem with the speed, the progression, the sprawliness of the game, well, this is very much a Civ 5-esque change, and I think it's really interesting. We'll see how this plays. Let me know in the comments any thoughts that you think I've missed, anything that you're really particularly excited to see. I've been Ursa. Thank you for bearing with my ramblings. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.